There's a reason drifting and trolling works. Anchoring is... My dad loved anchoring, but my dad, again, had spent a lot of time fishing the river, Alabama River, and so he knew just where his spots were, and he would anchor and fish those spots. Whereas me, it's hard to tell where the fish are all the time. I'm gonna have to cut and retie here, I believe. In the corner of the mouth with a J-hook. I catch more channel cats fishing for brim than I ever catch fishing specifically for channels. All right, so part 2 in Black Warrior River fishing tips, or fishing the Black Warrior River. If you want to take a trip on the Black Warrior River, what's the best way to fish it? It's been my experience that drifting is the best way to go. I mean, even bass fishermen, they essentially drift. They drift and cast. You know, they'll get up, especially up below Bankhead Dam, they'll get up below the dam and deploy their trolling motors and just drift down, casting into the rocks and reeling back. They'll use Alabama rigs, they'll use crankbaits, they'll use all sorts of things. But essentially it's drift fishing, but you're just drift cast fishing. I don't do really any much casting anymore. I just drift and troll. Sometimes I'll anchor and fish, but by and large, the best way I've found to fish the Black Warrior River is drifting and trolling. There's nothing wrong with anchoring. It's just that that's where I've had my greatest luck, is drifting. Tail race fishing is really good. That's really where the best fishing is, especially below Bankhead, below Oliver Dam, but they've got a lot of the Oliver below Holt Lake Dam. It's all sort of blocked off. You can't really get into the shallow part. They don't want you in there. It really is very dangerous. Some people would argue that's the best fishing in the state, but you just can't get in there because it's like illegal, and I don't want to, don't get in trouble. Now below Bankhead, they give you a little bit more leeway. You know, off those rocks, I've caught some of the biggest bluegill I can catch off those rocks directly below in the tail race, especially when they maybe only have one gate open or the gate's partially open, whatever, minimal current. You can really catch a lot of fish. The section of the Black Warrior River I fish, your best luck is going to be fishing the tail race of all the dams, and you'll catch fish down to about a bow or two below the dam. That's pretty much the way you do it. Especially in the spring, the fish are going to head upstream, and once they hit the dam, they can't move upstream anymore, and so they'll begin to move back downstream to find places they can bed and breed and whatever. And then they'll hang out in that cool oxygenated water just all summer. In wintertime, they don't move far, especially the bluegill. The bluegill never move very far. Catfish, I generally do almost all my fishing within a mile or two of all the dams. If you're not close to a dam on the Black Warrior, I would fish a section of the river that has lots of bends and curves, especially down below town. If you get from Holt Lake all the way down to the Oliver Dam, all the way down to almost way past the airport where they built the new bridge, the overpass. I forget what they call that one first real major bend. That's where I would start fishing if I'm going to fish that section of the river. Because straight stovepipe parts of the river are generally not all that great a part of most any river, because it's just a big long run, as they would say. You ripple, hold, runs, as the Doug Stange would say. You know, when I do my jug fishing on the lower part of the Black Warrior, I just find bendy sections of the river, and I'll put my jugs at the beginning of whatever bendy stretch, and then I'll let the jugs drift, and I'll be drifting as well with my rod and reel. And then once I start catching some fish, I can, you know, off the jugs, put about 30 jugs out, and once they're all drifting down and scattered out, I'll go find them all, pick them all up, run the drift again, things like that. You could just pick one or two bends, you know, S-curve bends, and just fish them. Just troll them, fish them, drift them, anchor, fish off those points and things like that, inside bends, things like that. And you can fish all day long. You don't have to fish the whole river. Just pick a tiny portion and pick it apart methodically. So drifting, trolling, tail race fishing, jug fishing works very well. That is the #1 way catfishing is done around these parts. People just don't do a lot of rod and reel catfishing. Now some people do. They can anchor up. They know where the fish are. Jug fishing will tell you where the fish are. That's the beautiful thing about it. And then you can find out where they are, and you can anchor up, and you can put your favorite braid out, chicken livers and gizzards work really well here because the fish are sort of trained, because that's what guys are using in their jug. They're trained, they bite on that, so they'll catch that. I generally find that salted bluegill is my preferred catfish bait, because you have the bluegill, which is a natural bait, and the salt, which is, fish tend to like salt. Trot lines, I've seen guys just camp out all night running trot lines, man. The only thing is, I think they changed the regs here in Alabama. Trot lines, you can have 100 hooks now if you're a non-commercial fisherman. If you're a commercial fisherman, you can use more, but they've restricted it. You know, that's non-commercial fishermen can only have 100 hooks on a trot line, or you can only have 100 hooks, period, if you're running a trot line. They don't say anything about jugs, but you know, I typically am not going to run more than 50 jugs with 2 hooks a piece on them anyway. And you know, I've never, you know, they don't seem to classify jug lines the way they do trot lines. The law specifically says trot lines, but not jugs. But do your own research on that. And I try to keep up to date on that. I don't really like running trot lines because I'm just one person, and jug lines just seem to be easier and a little bit safer for me. Shad is definitely the preferred bait in terms of the trot lines and things like that. A lot of guys like running shad on the jugs as well, but I just prefer bluegill because I just love bluegill fishing, and I often save my bluegill for, I just fillet them out, chop the heads off, throw away the innards, and salt them down, and that's my main bait. Live bait, light line, small hooks. If you're trying to learn the river, any river, if you go live bait, light line, small hooks, you're going to catch something. You're going to catch something, whether it's bluegill, whether it's bass, whether it's crappie, whether it's catfish, whether it's channel caps, flatheads, or blues, striped bass I've caught on it. You can, if you're a rod and reel fisherman and you want to learn the Black Warrior River, light line, small hooks, live bait. I tell you why, because the waters are clear, especially once you get up into the rocky portion that I'm talking about. The waters are deep and the waters are clear. The fish can see those lines. A lot of people say catfish are not line sensitive, but I'm going to tell you, when I'm fishing 30-pound test line or less monofilament, I catch more catfish. I'm just telling you. Now, I prefer 50-pound monomint on my jugs because it does give you some more bite resistance, and generally catfish are not as line shy. But when you're dealing with clear water, yeah, I've just generally found that I catch more bluegill on 4-pound line than I do on 8-pound line. But I generally use 8-pound line because I'm trolling and because I'm drifting. I need a little bit of strength there so that I can pull free when I get my line stuck between rocks, trees like that. That's why I use the paternoster rig and slinky weights. That works really well for me. But live bait, light line, small hooks. And once you sort of fished a while and you see some patterns, then go to your artificials. Then go to your bigger, heavier lines and your bigger, heavier baits, things like that. That's just the way I approach it. I'm gonna start with what I know will work without a doubt, and then I'll grow from that and grow into a larger body of knowledge. Like, I'm really just about dead set this next season, for at least for my rod and reel fishing, is to rig my fly reel with a true fly rod and some fly casting for pure top water work and flies. And I'll even tip my flies with live bait, but pure live bait, especially fishing the mayfly catch, the mayfly hatch, and various things like that, damsel flies, mosquito hatch, things like that. I'll just use lures here. I've had some lures sent to me, Black Warrior lures. I make lures, make flies and things, but I need to review these at some point. Someone sent to me. I have my own feathers and things that I tie things with, and I'll tip them with a maggot and I'll just cast it off into there. But golly, it would be great if we could just get a floating fly line, or maybe sinking tip, or maybe just put a floating fly line with a, I don't know, 1 foot section of lead core line at the tip, and just plop it in there toward the bank, and as the wind, basically drifting and casting. That method works well, and I think the fly rod is the go for that. And then I'll get me a 9-foot crappie rod, or what I would really prefer to have is like a 10-foot spay rod or a switch rod, like a 7-weight, purely for bluegill, with my slinky weights fishing and dragging off the bottom, and then another rod maybe a heavier rod for catfish that you're drifting with a cut bait off the back of the boat. And so that's a 3-rod system that's in addition to my jugs and things like that. So that's way you can combine things. You can, if you're a bass fisherman, hey, go ahead and put out 10 or 12 jugs and then go do your bass fishing for the day, all right? Or if you're a bluegill fisherman, hey, hang a catfish rod off the back of the boat, all right? And the Black Warrior River is great for a variety of fishing. Don't ever restrict yourself to one form of fishing. Get you an old cane pole and start fishing. I mean, I see crappie fishermen all the time fishing off the bank wall with essentially cane poles. And they're catching them. That's all I have for you today on Black Warrior River fishing tips. If you like this, it's getting cold. I tend to do more videos like this when it gets cold out and I'm not fishing as much. More teaching videos. I can do them right here in the house. If you like it, rate, comment, subscribe. Click the little bell thing. Someone asked me, what about my live streams? I'm probably going to start doing those on Fridays at noon. I generally take the last half of December off anyway. If you like what I'm doing, you want to support what I'm doing, you can either contribute to Patreon or you can go to my shop. I have various products that I make. I'm working on a batch of floats here for a patron, but I have them for sale directly to the public. Tie flies, tie lures. I make fishing reels, handline fishing reels that I love. That's another technique that is very effective on the Black Warrior. If you want to try it, I'll see you on the next one. See you.